This is a place where you will always be seen and heard.
Okay.
So maybe we'll start.
Yes, why not?
We have enough participants here. So good morning, colleagues. We are starting our press conference by Ambassador Polyanskiy, first deputy of Russian mission to the UN. Thank you for your questions. We have received a number of them. If you want to ask a question, please put it in the chat box or just raise hand. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Theodore. I welcome everybody. I hope that our events are well perceived in your journalist community and that you really need them. So I decided to introduce a little bit of a new practice today. I will start with a quote of the month and a tweet of the month, as far as I see them. So the quote of the month is attributed to a very famous Polish Jewish philosopher, Stanisław Jerzy Lec. He lived in the first half of the last century, and he said a very cute thing. It sounds like we thought that we have reached the bottom, but then somebody knocked from beneath. This is about Russia-Western relations during this month. I can elaborate on this if somebody wants, and I guess that somebody will like me to do so. And then a tweet of the month. The Oscar goes to State Department spokesman Ned Price. So I am reading aloud his tweet. Tweet of 15th of this month, 15th of April. We are sending a clear message to Moscow. We are holding you to account for your role in the SolarWinds intrusion, the reports of bounties on US soldiers in Afghanistan, and attempts to interfere in 2020 US elections. And Mr. Price is quoting his boss, Mr. Blinken. Seems to be quite a normal tweet, but I would like to draw your attention to the fact that we are being held accountable for the reports on bounties on US soldiers. And this is the exact quote from Mr. Blinken's speech. So this is a new chapter of manipulations. It used to be highly likely. There is no other plausible explanation. Now it is only the reports. So it means, guys, that you can report on something on me, and I may be sanctioned because of your reports. And nobody will ask me whether it is true or not true. So this is really a new chapter of disinformation. And I really think that this quotation deserves to be tweet of the month. So now to your questions. We have received quite a lot of them. I'll try to be as brief as possible. Well, the first question is from Philippe Ratet, Agence France Presse. Some sources said that Wagner elements were combating with Chad rebels coming from Libya who are trying to take power in N'Djamena. I know you said Wagner don't represent the Russian government, but you didn't exclude that some Russian citizens were in Libya. Did you have any information about the possibility for Wagner members to join Chad rebels? Well, this is like really a very fascinating Hollywood script, but it has nothing to do with reality. And this is all about reports that I mentioned at the beginning of my press conference. And I'm not excluding that these reports will also become basis for some action against Russia, because this campaign against, I quote, malign influence of Russia in Africa was launched by the United States a couple of years ago, maybe even before this. Now it has become a crusade, and it is very clear that these reports, for which again we can be sanctioned if we rely on Ned Price's opinion and Mr. Blinken's. So these reports are spreading right now. There are no facts, there are only reports. I faced this situation a couple of years ago in Security Council. I think that Philippe may remember this, when there were allegations about, I quote, Russian mercenaries torturing people in Central African Republic, and there was a person whose name was pronounced, and he was claiming that Russian mercenaries tortured him, cut off his finger, and I don't know, did a lot of other atrocities. But fortunately, there were, immediately before our meeting started, there were revelations by the same person that he was approached by Western special services. I will not name the country, but you all understand whom I have in mind. And these people not only paid money to him to pretend that he was tortured by Russian mercenaries and that his finger was cut off, though he lost his finger in combat against government forces, but also blackmailed on the fate of his relatives. So this is a very dirty story, and it didn't have any continuation because, well, it was a big fiasco of Western propaganda operation in Central African Republic. But I really see a lot of similarities in this case. So the situation is in Chad is very precarious. It's very fragile. There are a lot of rebels. There are a lot of military formations. You know that the situation with all these military groups began 10 years ago when NATO and the United States bombed Libya against international law, against the decision of the Security Council in clear breach of this decision. And so we are now having this mess until today, thanks to this event, which our Western colleagues do not like to recollect. Again, I can't exclude that there might be Russian citizens in Africa. There are a lot of Russians traveling abroad. They have different things to do. I can't exclude that some of them really fight for money, but we're not the only country whose citizens are involved in these activities, and we're not responsible for these citizens, so they can do whatever they do. Russia is a free country. If our colleagues present us concrete facts, then of course we will study them and we will proceed them in the necessary way. But so far there are no facts on the reports. And again, I refer to Ned Price's tweet. Second question from Philippe. There is this Thursday Security Council interactive meeting. It's today, yeah, organized, I believe, by Niger on the future of African armed groups deployed in Libya. Are you going to participate in this meeting, and what proposals your country has to reduce the threat of those African armed groups who can go to destabilize other countries in the region, especially in the Sahel region? Well, indeed, there is a meeting. I frankly haven't heard that it is devoted specifically on the future of African armed groups. It was presented to us as an interactive dialogue on Libya. This is informal. I think it's a closed meeting. My colleague Anna Yevstegneeva is participating in this meeting in an hour's time, and of course we have our position. We are very much worried. I tried to explain to you our analysis of why there are a lot of African armed groups right now in Libya. We believe that the more situation in Libya and elsewhere in the Sahel is stabilized, the less there are opportunities for armed groups to survive and to function. And of course, a very important precondition for stabilization of this situation would be to stop any foreign interference into the affairs of these countries, which is not the case so far. We clearly see that there are interests of big countries behind a lot of conflicts in Africa, and this situation continues. So we always appeal to our colleagues to stop interfering, stop meddling into the internal affairs of other states. They are very keen and very energetic in accusing Russia of such things, but they are very modest and very shy when it comes to their own involvement in different situations in Africa or elsewhere. Question from Carlos Tia. Ukraine has dammed the Dnieper to prevent water reaching people in Crimea. How can Russia counteract this, and why it is not discussed at the Security Council? Well, Crimea is not an issue for the Security Council. We know that this is a part of Russian Federation. There was a referendum and people decided to rejoin Russia. We spent many hours explaining of the reasoning of such a step, and we had several events, and we will be having more events to explain the real situation in Crimea and the real situation in Ukraine and the motivation behind citizens of Crimea taking such a decision. Indeed, Ukraine is blocking water to reach Crimea for 5 years or more so far, but it's not the only blockade that Ukraine imposed. It started with the electricity blockade, and I would say that we managed to help our compatriots in Crimea. It is now not dependent on Ukraine, neither on electricity or water. There are a lot of facilities that are being introduced, and I think this year or maybe beginning of next year, we will reach total water independence from Ukraine. This is, of course, a very important situation, and as you know, Ukraine was part of the same country, Soviet Union, and all the facilities there were built for everybody, and the water pipes and the water channel in Ukraine was built specifically to provide water to Crimea. So now Ukraine decides that the citizens of Crimea do not deserve to have water from Ukraine, from this facility that was built specifically for the citizens of Crimea. It's up to Kiev, of course, to decide. I just wanted to point out to contradiction in very big contradiction in Kiev's position. So on the one hand, it is appealing to citizens of Crimea, to residents of Crimea, to residents of the east of Ukraine, saying that they are part of this country and they want, I mean, Kiev want them to come back. Well, the question of Crimea is closed. As you know, the question of Donbass is not closed, but the door is almost shut because people there receive on the daily basis bullets and shells from Ukrainian forces, and they have very little motivation to want to come back. So if this is the method to convince the rebellious regions to come back to Ukraine, well, this is a very dubious policy, but it's of course up to Kiev to decide. Majid Lee, on Iraq, the president of Kurdistan region sent a letter to Russian mission and other members of Security Council asking for a broader UN role in Iraq, especially in terms of Erbil-Baghdad relations and the upcoming national elections. I attached the copy of the letter, and indeed, I think we have it. We didn't, sorry. We didn't, but nevertheless, I know the issue. Any responses to those requests by President Barzani, given the vote to renew UNAMI is just 2 weeks away? What is Russia's position in terms of expanding the role of the UN mission in Iraq, as it is requested by President Barzani and the Iraqi Prime Minister? Well, I think that Iraq is a constant topic for my press conferences, and this is also thanks to you, Majid. You always provide us questions on this country. I can tell you that our position is that the mandate of UNAMI is flexible and considerable enough. So it gives the possibility for the mission and Mrs. Hennis Plasshardt to provide good offices, both in dialogue between Baghdad and Erbil, and also to render technical assistance in the organization of the elections. Of course, we think that the strengthening of interaction between Baghdad and Erbil will contribute to the overall stabilization of the country. But this is, of course, an internal dialogue, and it has certain rules, certain traditions, and the central role in this dialogue belongs to Iraqis. There is no doubt about this. We will indeed study in the Security Council the demands of the Iraqi side in connection to the elections, and we will have to decide how better to help Iraqi government to conduct elections. So this discussion is ongoing, and I would rather not give any details so far, but this is in the center of attention of the members of the Security Council, I can assure you. A second question from Majid. It's more philosophic, I would say. Many say that China, along with Russia, are increasing their influence at the United Nations, challenging the US and the Western decades-long dominance. Do you agree with that assessment? If yes, what kind of UN Russia aspires to see? Oh, again, this is a very big question. Russia, of course, aspires to see UN as a symbol and as a stronghold of multilateralism. Because this is the only universal organization where every country, no matter how big or small it is, it has a role to play, and it has a clear voice. So we think it should continue like this, and we think that Security Council and General Assembly are the only organs that have total legitimacy in world affairs. It applies to the use of force, it applies to sanctions, it applies to everything else. Of course, it doesn't prevent individual countries of introducing sanctions and punitive measures and waging wars, but this is outside of the scope of international relations, of international law, and that's why Security Council and General Assembly are important, especially for this. And of course, the specialized UN agencies, they play a very important role in such questions as healthcare, as climate, as development, and we do not underestimate this role. We are on board, we are cooperating. The problem is that some countries today, they say that they really want another club. They want a club of like-minded countries where nobody is raising the voice against them, where nobody is swimming against the stream. And of course, they would prefer to have the United Nations without such uncomfortable members like China and Russia, who have the prerogative not only to argue, but to block the decisions that they think go against their national interest. And by doing so, we are also thinking not about Russia and China, but also about other countries in the world who are not represented in the Security Council. So you should look at it through this prism. So I wouldn't say that we want to challenge US and Western decades-long dominance. We just want to create a fair world, a world that everybody deserves, a world where everybody's voice will be heard, and United Nations is very important for this. There is no other framework where we could realize this dream of many generations. We have all the chances right now because we have absolutely no reasons to see a new Cold War. We don't have any ideological difficulties and divergences, which was the case. If you take the capitalist system, economic system, we might have a little different view on social issues, on the way the states should be organized, but it doesn't prevent us from being reliable and open-minded and good-willing countries. So we have we still have this golden chance to make the world a better place, and of course we will oppose the attempts to burn the international cooperation down to a certain like-minded democracies, so-called, which would try to impose their will on everybody else, and that would try to lecture everybody on how they should behave and how they should live. So if you call this challenging the US and Western decades-long dominance, Mohsen Taherzadeh, three questions. The President of the United States ordered the cessation of support for the Saudi coalition in the invasion of Yemen. Do you assess whether this command has been executed or not? It's very difficult for me to see whether this whether this command was executed or not, because we are not meddling in the internal affairs of the United States, and we don't have inside information of what commands are given and how they are executed. But we see that the situation in Yemen is still very precarious. We supported Saudi peace initiative, and I think everybody also supported it. And now there are very intensive and very difficult negotiations, which we fully support to introduce long-lasting peace in Yemen. I think this country deserves this. It's very difficult, again, for me to judge how United States will be acting or should be acting, or whether there are changes in its attitude toward conflict in Yemen. There are a lot of encouraging words. We are watching what's happening on the ground, but I think that our American colleagues are the best party to be addressed this kind of question. Both Russia and Iran have called for the United Nations to play a role in regional dialogue, in particular under Resolution 598. Why hasn't the United Nations done any tangible actions in this regard yet? How the security to be more attentive to this idea? You know, Mohsen, there is a lot of activity around possible regional cooperation, regional dialogue, including under Resolution 598. You know that there are a lot of initiatives from many countries, from my country including, about the organization of regional security, some confidence building measures, that are intended to boost the dialogue between the neighbors. And we're not the only ones who are thinking along these lines. Of course, there are Western countries, there is China, there are regionals themselves. So I think there is a lot of thinking around this issue right now, and maybe we will see some kind of practical and tangible results in the nearest future. But of course, one thing that is very important to understand before we can proceed with this kind of exercise, sorry, is the fate of JCPOA. You know that there are very intensive negotiations now in Vienna, and we all want to understand how the United States will return to JCPOA, what will be practical steps on this way. I know that United States and Iran are both engaged so far indirectly, but still we are helping these two sides to come to a common understanding. And of course, the restoration of JCPOA in its previous edition, with the United States complying with this obligation and with Iran complying with these obligations, and with everybody complying by their obligations, will be a very important breakthrough and an important building block for any regional dialogue to proceed in Persian Gulf, and even in a bigger geographic scope.
Ambassador, if I may, we have a couple of questions from the chat on Iran, so maybe we will ask them. So, Benny, you were the first.
Okay, so Ambassador, in that leaked tape, Javad Zarif said that Russia didn't want the JCPOA to happen and pretty much sabotaged it. Your comment?
Well, it's very difficult to comment on tapes and reports. You better ask our American colleagues. They like reports and tapes and scandals. So we're commenting on facts. The fact is that we are together in JCPOA, and Iran was complying with JCPOA for a long time. Iran is a very important partner for Russia. So the first important breach of JCPOA was when the United States decided to withdraw, and it triggered a lot of other events. Well, there can be a lot of emotions around this issue. There can be a lot of national positions. They never were considered to be unified. But nevertheless, we are looking at facts. And the fact is that JCPOA has survived. Iran is a member of JCPOA. Iran is ready to remain member of JCPOA and to play a positive role. So in this regard, I think this is much more important than any tapes, any scandals, any reports. And we, of course, will discuss this issue bilaterally with our Iranian colleagues. We already have, and we will, of course, judge the importance of this or that action or report by actions and not by words and by claims. Thank you.
Doesn't sound like a denial, Ambassador.
I'm not Javad Zarif to deny. If it were my leaked tapes, then it would be a right question for me. But how can I comment on tapes of somebody else? This is very much above my payroll. Sorry.
Maria Khrenova is the next on Iran.
Hi, Theodore. Hi, Ambassador. I lost Ambassador in this Windows. Yeah, here you are. Congratulations with upcoming Orthodox Easter, by the way. So actually, yeah, my question on Iran was perfectly asked by Benny. Thank you, Benny. But I have another question. I just saw that Maria Zakharova announced a visit of Secretary General to Moscow. So do you have any information for us on what specific topics will be focused the discussion there?
Well, indeed, Secretary General will visit Moscow. He will be there on the 12th and the 13th of May. As you know, Secretary General regularly visits Moscow. He visits not only Moscow, but all other important capitals of the world and all other cities as much as he can, of course. So I think that almost every time we have this comparison of notes or touching base with the head of the UN on different international issues. And this is not the exception. So we expect very fruitful negotiations with Foreign Minister Lavrov first and foremost. This will be the core of his visit. We are always glad to welcome Secretary General and his team in Moscow, and I hope that there will be a very intensive diplomatic and cultural program for him. Moscow is very beautiful at this time of the year. You know it as well as I do. So I am really very envious of Secretary General in this regard. Thank you.
Can I follow up, please? But can you just tell if it will be more focused on Ukraine or Syria or any other issues?
All these topics will be covered. I assure you, Ukraine, Syria, other issues, Libya, I don't know, climate, whatever. Always such negotiations include very wide agenda. I just wanted to, Theodore, a question to you. I thought I was answering questions on Iran because I was going down the list of issues, but
yes,
I can't.
Ambassador, we are smoothly moving to the block of questions on Russia-United States relations. So you have one of them asked before. So please let's
do step by step.
Yeah, and then we'll go with the others.
The third question of Mohsin. The United States, on the one hand, imposes sanctions on Russia, and on the other hand, offers a meeting with President Putin. To what extent is this action of the Biden administration to influence U.S. domestic policy? Well, again, I am far from claiming that I am an expert on U.S. domestic policy, and I frankly try to be as far as of it as possible. This is a messy thing. As for international relations, as for relations between Russia and the United States, you know that we formulated our approach towards United States in these particular circumstances. We are ready to be a reliable partner of United States or of everybody else to the extent that United States will be a reliable partner and good willing partner of us. So far, as I quoted to you, Mr. Letts, we have reached the bottom, but then somebody knocked from beneath. That's about our relations. Really, there are a lot of things that we don't understand. There are a lot of things that United States claims to have happened and provides no proof about this. This is very poisonous to any bilateral relations, including relations between Russia and the United States. As you know, both our ambassadors now are in their respective capitals, consulting with relevant agencies on how to proceed further. Is it the lowest point? I don't know. We hope that it is the lowest point, but it takes two to tango. If United States wants further escalation of the situation, we have a lot of measures to offer. In counterbalance, we are very pragmatic in our approach. We accepted the idea of a summit because we are always for the dialogue. But we'll see how it will all prepare. We remember how it was with Trump administration when the sole issue of President Trump meeting President Putin was already considered to be a national treason, and he was almost prosecuted for this. I remember also at the beginning of his presidency when some of his members of his staff were also criticized and prosecuted for meeting Russian ambassador Kislyak at this time. So I don't know what kind of approach the US administration will take this time. If it's constructive, if it's forward-looking, if it's about cooperating on a lot of important issues where we can cooperate, then we are there. If it's about blackmailing, blaming, and trying to, as I quoted this tweet, to make Russia responsible for the reports, then this is a one-side game. We don't need to play it. The United States set the rules themselves and themselves. So it's up to them to play. It's up to it to play. So, well, again, I don't know whether I answered this question or not. I imagine there might be follow-ups on this issue, yeah?
Let's end up with this question. Gabriel Gavin, please.
Yes, thanks, Theodore, and thanks, Mr. Ambassador. Given the kind of context of the last few weeks with multiple envoys being expelled in tit-for-tat moves between Moscow, Washington, and a number of European capitals, how would you characterize the current state of relations between Russia and the West? And what practical implications is the closure of some of these diplomatic channels having on international diplomacy? Are you concerned?
Of course, we're concerned, and again, I have to repeat for the third time the quote that I started for, that we thought that we have reached the bottom, but then somebody knocked from beneath, and that's really the situation. We thought we were at the lowest point, but it seems that our Western colleagues and partners have a lot of other instruments in their toolbox to try to expose Russia, its malign behavior, its role as an enemy of humanity, as a rogue state, whatever, you name it yourself. So this was a very strange month, not only because of the actions of the US. As you know, we declared countermeasures and we're now going to implement them step by step. They are all clear and transparent. We were also a bit surprised by the actions of some of the United States henchmen in Europe. They also started to expel Russian diplomats to show their loyalty, I think, to their patron, and this is very ridiculous, frankly. So let's take the situation in the Czech Republic when the country itself cannot understand what has happened 7 years ago. There are a lot of theories about this. There are a lot of versions. There are no proofs. There are no facts. There are only very questionable photos of passports which have been already denied. I mean, their authenticity has been already denied by the relevant countries. And on the basis of these facts, facts, of course, like this, it's not facts, it's claims and allegations. On the basis of these allegations, this country decided that it is reasonable enough to introduce such measures against Russia. Well, again, it takes two to tango. If Czech Republic wants to diminish our relations to a zero, we will follow suit. It's reasonable. The Czech Republic expelled a lot of our diplomats, again, without proving anything of their involvement of any activity, malign activity, of any other activity. We have big interest in Czech Republic. We have a lot of citizens used to have a lot of citizens who visit Czech Republic. I don't know how it will happen now. And of course, we need a lot of presence in Czech Republic to really accommodate for the interests of these tourists who are coming to this country. If the flow is zero, well, maybe we will not need so many people, of course, in this country. I don't know. It's not up to me to decide, and we'll see how things will proceed. But the Prague authorities, they mentioned also the word parity. As you maybe noticed, there is no such notion as parity in the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic and Consular Relations. If Czech Republic understands parity by keeping the same number of diplomats in respective capitals, okay, it's not our choice. But we made a very logical assumption that if we, Russia, do not have any local staff hired in any country of the world, there are very, very seldom exceptions in some African and Asian countries, but they are really very, very few. But as a rule, for example, here in New York, we have our own drivers, we have our own cleaning ladies, we have our own, I don't know, you name it, everybody. So we do everything ourselves. We don't hire a single American here in the United States. Neither does Russian embassy in Washington, neither does Russian embassy in Prague. But the Czech Republic has several hundreds, as far as I understand, or 100-something employees hired in Moscow who are doing other basic things. They have Russian drivers, they have Russian cleaning ladies, they have Russian assistants to diplomats. Okay, parity is parity. So if we don't have these people, this supporting staff, then Czech Republic will also not have this supporting staff. We were not the first to use the word parity. So every action, of course, has its own implications and meaning for the overall context of the relations.
And if I might just ask by way of a really quick follow-up, Theo, Moscow reacted quite strongly to the expulsion of diplomats from Prague. So Prague, I think, expelled 18 envoys, and Moscow responded by expelling 20, which the Czech Republic has since said was a stronger reaction than they anticipated, and looked to their allies for support. Is Moscow sending a message?
What kind of message?
I mean, by taking an asymmetrical approach, is it? What's the rationale behind that?
You mean we would expel? We should have expelled 18 instead of 20.
I think they indicated that it was a stronger reaction that they'd expected, and they were expecting a tit for tat rather than an asymmetrical response.
You know, when I was studying at school at the university, arithmetic was not my favorite subject, and I really had very bad marks. And I don't think that you should consider diplomats to be very good in these exact sciences. So it's not the question of exact number, it's a question of signal. And of course, we think that, well, Czech Republic thought that there are 18 people who do something that they don't like. We found out that there are 20 Czechs that are doing something that we don't like. Again, given the fact that we are not big specialists in arithmetics, I think you should forgive us for this little bit advanced step. And there is also the same situation with several other countries. I think with Poland, but with the Baltic states and with Bulgaria, I think the number was exactly the same. It's not the question of the number. It's the question of an attitude and the question of intention. So by doing so, Czech Republic and the other countries, they clearly showed to us that they have no intention to develop develop bilateral relations with Russia on a goodwill basis. And then the numbers do not play a very big role, frankly speaking. We'll see how we'll tackle the parity and how many people will be left from Czech embassy and who will clean their floors after all the supporting staff left. Please.
Thank you. Edie has a follow-up on Russia-US relations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, and nice to see you and Fedor.
My pleasure.
You talked about US-Russian relations. You thought hitting rock bottom and going below rock bottom. What steps do you think that the United States, the Biden administration, could or should take to try and restore those relations? And what could Russia also do?
Thank you, Edith. It's a bit of provocative question because I'm far from giving instructions to Biden administration. As you know, we are different from the United States by the fact that we do not teach other people or government what they should do and what they shouldn't do. The fact is that the United States decided to break these relations, to downgrade them. That was, I would say, that the drastic movement towards escalation was done at the last days of Obama administration, when there was a big expulsion of diplomats, when there was a confiscation, de facto stealing of our property, which is still in American hands in Maryland and Long Island. Then there was this development on Skripal case, the Skripal hoax, where we have about 200 questions unanswered by the British sides, and everything is top secret and classified, and it's highly likely, and there is no other plausible explanation, you name it further. So, and then step by step, any interaction with Russia, as I already said, so President Trump's desire to meet President Putin in Helsinki was regarded as an act of national treason. Meeting Ambassador Kislyak was also fatal for some members of his administration. It was United States line of action, quite clear, and it's up to the United States to correct this line of action. I don't know what kind of steps they have to take if they want to correct this line of action. But it's of course up to them to decide, and it's not up to us to give any advice to them, any pieces of advice. I would say that it's quite clear for anybody who is more or less an expert in diplomatic relations when country is doing some steps of goodwill and when country wants to escalate the situation. As for Russia, what Russia can do? Well, what can Russia do? Russia has always kept the door open. We have never shut the door. We are not shutting the door right now. We are saying that we are ready to interact, to engage on the issues of mutual interest. If the United States wants to perceive us as an enemy, as a threat, well, it's worst scenario for the United States, but we will accept it. If the United States is ready to cooperate and to really solve international issues together, we are ready. You know where to call us. So our position has not changed. It's very consistent. We were always supportive of positive scenario for relations with the United States and with the West in general. Again, sorry for repeating many times, it takes two to tango. So far, there is no music playing and no dance on the dance floor. If I may, Theodore, if there is a quick follow-up to this, because I want to finish, I have two more questions, and I think that these...
We'll return to that issue anyway, so let's finish up with those questions we sent before, yeah.
Okay, so then I will briefly answer a question from Joseph Klein. What would Russia like to see as a fair and equitable resolution of the Cyprus dispute? And does Russia believe that Turkey's thousands of occupation troops still stationed in northern Cyprus may violate international law? Well, Cyprus is a hot issue nowadays. You know that there is an ongoing or maybe finished already conference in Geneva with Secretary General participating, and we really are wishing him good luck. I know that there was already a press conference by him. I had the time to browse it. I know that there is no solution in sight for the time being, which is very deplorable. As for Russia, we're sticking to the international acknowledged Security Council supported basis for this settlement of situation in Cyprus with a bicommunal, bizonal federation. There is no any shift in our policy. We are closely following what is happening. Our remarks on this on several occasions were that maybe we should think about reforming the system of guarantors, because sometimes they have become they are becoming part of the problem, not part of the solution. That was really our assessment, which we do not conceal. So maybe the solution lies there. But it's up to the sides, of course, to decide what they want. And Tobias Burns asked a question: what can you tell us about the Security Council meeting on Friday in Myanmar? What outcome do you expect? Well, on Myanmar, we indeed are holding some informal meeting. I think it is an open dialogue on Myanmar with participation of some ASEAN countries, which is logical because as we see it, this meeting is important to support the recent summit of ASEAN countries on the 24th of April, which finished with a very important declaration and 5-point plan of action. We totally support these decisions. We think that ASEAN is playing and has to play a very important role in providing good services, in protagonizing parties in Myanmar. The situation is still quite dire in this country. We were since the very beginning appealing to the end of foreign interference. We were against any incitement of violence. So our position was that all sides should refrain of violence, of actions, provocative actions, and meet each other at negotiation table. The ASEAN position goes very much along these lines, and we would welcome any further involvement of ASEAN, and of course we would welcome the peaceful resolution of the current crisis in Myanmar with full respect of its laws, with full respect of the desire of people of Myanmar, and with full respect of its sovereignty and territorial integrity. So I exhausted the questions that were sent to me. Thank you very much for sending them in advance. And I think we have 10 more minutes for questions from the floor.
There are some questions. Pamela Falk.
Thank you, Fedor, and thank you, Ambassador, for the briefing. It's Pamela from CBS. My question is about Afghanistan. As you know, you played a role, the UN played a role in about a year ago, a little over a year ago, endorsing or adopting the US Taliban deal. And you heard from President Biden last night that the US is beginning the withdrawal of US forces around beginning in May. What do you think, what is the RF position? What is your country's position on the US withdrawal and what happens next? And one quick follow-up on the Biden-Putin summit. Can you say if it's been welcomed and where it might be? RIA reported yesterday it's tentatively set for June 15th to 16th. Where do you think that's going and where might it be? Last time it was in Helsinki. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pamela. I will start from the second question. I don't think that logistics is as important. They can meet wherever they want if there is a will from two parties. As I told you, the last experience of Russia-US summit is that President Trump was accused of national treason and had enormous headaches because of saying that it is okay to meet President Putin. So I don't know how it will happen with President Biden. Of course, it's not the very good history behind this in terms of perception by U.S. political establishment. But well, we were never avoiding summit. We were never avoiding dialogue. We are ready to engage on whatever issues the both sides find it constructive. So the problem was created by the United States. It's up to the United States to clear this mess. If they want normal relations, okay, we will wait, no problem. We are there. President Putin is ready to meet, as his spokesman said repeatedly. So logistics, I think, is secondary in this regard. When and where, well, no problem from our side, I assure you, and no preconditions. As for Afghanistan, it's indeed a very precarious situation. We follow the ups and downs of U.S. negotiations with Taliban. We try to be very instrumental and we try to make our input. As you know, there was recently a meeting in Moscow of the Troika, of the extended Troika with Afghan parties, and we had a very good declaration, which was distributed as a document of the United Nations, as far as I understand. And our position there is quite clear. We want peace and stability in Afghanistan. We are ready to contribute to further efforts to bring peace to this country. But of course, it's first and foremost the solution for Afghans and by Afghans. and they need to come to terms themselves. We are trying to facilitate this issue. How and when and in what form United States will end as in Afghanistan is of course up to Washington, up to the United States. We were, as I quoted at the beginning of this conference, already sanctioned for the reports about Russia paying bounties to Taliban fighters. Even these reports were already refuted repeatedly by intelligence, by journalists, by fact finders, by everybody, but still it's on the table. But I can assure you that there is no reason behind this. We always played and will be playing very constructive role in Afghanistan. We want to see the end of US presence when US and Afghans find it comfortable and reasonable to do so, but it's up to them to decide.
Thank you.
Kerry Newton, the next.
Thank you, Fedor. Good morning, Mr. Ambassador. I think my colleague Stephanie has a similar question, so maybe I will ask them at the same time. Basically, it's about the SG renewal process. This year, there's a lot of self-assessed candidates, and we were wondering if Russia has already decided to endorse any candidate. If I'm not wrong, China and UK have already endorsed the current SG. And what Russia does think about all these new self-acclaimed candidates or applicants.
Thank you, Kerry, very much for this question. We heard that there are several self-appointed, I would say, candidates stepping in the race for Secretary General. But it's a very clear position that was expressed in the common letter by, if I'm not mistaken, President of the Security Council and PGA, that the candidates should be presented by the countries. That's why we respect, of course, the position and the desire of those who asked for becoming candidates for Secretary General's position. But so far as we understand, technically there is only one candidate, Secretary General Guterres, for re-election. We are now finalizing our position on his re-election, on supporting him or whatever in the race for the head of the UN. I think that his staying in Moscow would be a very good opportunity to hear his plans for the next 4 years if he is re-elected, to make him understand our preoccupations, our views on certain issues, and hopefully after this exchange we will be able to make our position more clear and more vocal. Thank you.
When is he going?
He is going on the 12th and 13th of May.
Okay.
Stephanie, do you have something to add? Do you have a follow-up on this?
Well, I guess I just wanted to know specifically, former president and vice president of Ecuador just said she's going to run, Rosalia Arteaga. So I was just wondering, considering she really has experience and she's sort of a heavyweight candidate, does that change your position at all? Do you think she should be considered because she's different from the other 6 self-nominated candidates?
Hello, Stephanie. Very glad to see you. I just repeat that if she is supported by Ecuador as a country, if there is a letter of support saying that Ecuador presents her candidature, her nomination, then of course we will consider. But so far, correct me if I'm wrong, but all the people that are in the news, they are self-nominated candidates. They are not supported by any government, and UN is an intergovernmental organization. There are maybe no clear rules of this, no constitution of how the Secretary General will be elected, but there are certain basic things. And if you read attentively the letters that are being circulated in this regard, you will clearly see that one very important criteria would be the support of national government.
Richard Roth and then Gloria.
Hello, Ambassador. Good morning. Thank you for the briefing. You said Russia is a free country. Okay. This morning, Mr. Navalny, in his court hearing in Moscow, called President Putin the naked king. He said, quote, "I would like to say your king is naked." And more than one little boy is shouting about it. Is now millions of people who are already shouting about it. It's quite obvious 20 years of incompetent rule have come to this. There is a crown sliding from his ears. Your naked king wants to rule until the end. He doesn't care about the country, is clung to power and wants to rule indefinitely. Your comment, please. Is this true?
Is this what is true that Mr. Navalny has said today, has pronounced himself in the quarter that Russia is a free country? I think that your quote proves the fact that Russia is a free country because Mr. Navalny, despite the fact that he is a convicted criminal and he's spending his time in prison right now, is allowed to say such things, and you can quote him. And this is not the case in many of developed democracies, so-called. I haven't heard a lot of quotes by Julian Assange, for example, recently, but how he views Western countries and the Western democracies. I haven't heard anybody asking questions about his state of health and why is he being held. For example, it's not that I'm comparing the two of them, of course. Mr. Navalny has nothing to do with Julian Assange. Julian Assange is.
Can you comment on his quotes?
On what quotes? On the quotes about President
Yes.
being a naked king or something?
Yes.
I think you chose a wrong clubhouse discussion, because you need to find a clubhouse discussion on psychology and on people whose mind is not very, I would say, sane to ask to comment these quotes. But this is a press conference about political issues. Mr. Navalny is a Russian citizen. He faces criminal charges on several cases, and he is now in prison. He's convicted. He comes to court and he makes certain statements. Well, it's up to him. Maybe he read this fairy tale in the prison right now and he's very much inspired by it. It's up to him to quote it. And again, the fact that he's quoting it and that you are spreading his quotes and that you are asking me questions about this is the best proof that Russia is a free country. Thank you.
Gloria.
Yes, my question, sir, is in UN peacekeeping missions, are there official Russian troops as a part of it? Because they're very, very well educated, the Russian troops. Are they in the peacekeeping in those African countries where there are conflicts?
Thank you, Gloria, for this issue. As far as I'm informed, there are Russian policemen in a lot of missions, but not Russian troops. Russian is not contributing military, I would say, troops for peacekeeping operations. Maybe I'm not aware of a handful of such people, but mostly these are different countries who contribute contingents for different reasons, for economic reasons, again, for language reasons, but we are mostly concentrating on sending policemen in peacekeeping missions. Thank you.
My other question is, sir, which countries, to your knowledge, are responsible for selling arms to all of these rebels in the Chad region and in all those areas of Africa where there are all these rebellions? Is it just who's selling weapons to them?
Oh, it's difficult to say, but there are sanctions committee who try to determine it in different configurations, who is selling arms. There are non-party subjects who are also trying to make profits out of this. It's very difficult to say and to comment, really.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a question on Syria.
Okay, and this should be maybe the last question because
and Toby wants a follow-up on Myanmar, so
okay.
It will be very fast.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Fedor. On Syria, the issue of the cross-border resolution, is there any formula under which Russia will agree to more than one crossing, like an additional crossing to Bab el-Hawa, but that we have now, or you don't want even Bab el-Hawa to be renewed? Thank you.
As far as thank you for the question. As far as we see, one border crossing is more than enough, and we really haven't seen enough proofs that it is indispensable given the fact that the attempts to launch cross-line deliveries are being sabotaged. So we have the impression that people are doing this on purpose to highlight the fact that allegedly the cross-border scheme is indispensable and there is no other way out. This is not convincing to us so far. We are continuing discussions in the Security Council. There are a lot of gray zones about cross-border deliveries. We also raised this issue in the Security Council. If you look through my boss, Vasily Nebenzy's statement yesterday on humanitarian Syrian issues, you will find a lot of answers there.
Okay, Toby.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I appreciate this one last follow-up on Myanmar, which is my question is simply, would sanctions in your view inflame the situation, or would some sort of Security Council sanctions be a signal with a positive effect, or is this something that you're considering? Thank you.
You are meaning Myanmar, yes, as far as I understand.
Yes, on Myanmar.
Myanmar. Well, we are not big fans of sanction instruments, as you might have a conclusion from our statements. We really think it's an ultimate tool, and we need to use it with very big caution, because it's very difficult to make targeted sanctions. Even if they are targeted against individuals, then still they would affect the population. And we see very bad example, for example, in Syria, when there are individual sanctions from Western countries, when there is asset freeze and so on and so forth. And they say that they have humanitarian exemptions, but this is not the case. Yesterday, even Mr. Lowcock acknowledged the fact that the situation is far from what is being depicted to us in terms of the sanctions. So it's very easy to introduce sanctions. It's very easy to launch this procedure and to shout that we are now introducing sanctions on this or that country. It's very difficult to lift these sanctions, and it's also very difficult to understand whether they are achieving results or not. In case of Myanmar specifically, we doubt it very much, and we think that by making pressure on only one side, by absolutely supporting the other side of this crisis situation in Myanmar, we are not helping to find a solution. The first thing is to stop violence, to sit down at the table and to understand what has happened, what reasoning have the military behind their actions, what are the reproaches of the opposition, what is the position of the civil society. I think we can do it. We have all the tools in our toolbox for this. But some countries say that we immediately need to introduce sanctions. Well, Myanmar lived under sanctions, it's not Security Council, but individual sanctions for dozens of years, and it didn't change much. Why do you think it should be introduced now, and why would it change something for this country? It would make it isolate, it would make it rely upon itself, it would give us less leverage in terms of influencing situation there and trying to be helpful in bringing together different parties. So we really are not supportive of this scenario, especially for Myanmar in current circumstances. And again, having learned about the results of ASEAN summit, we are more enthusiastic and more optimistic because we see the regional approach, we see this trend for a dialogue, we see this trend for involvement. This resonates very much with our position, and we think that those who are speaking about sanctions in this context, maybe they have in mind something else, maybe they have some other objectives in mind, but to help to reestablish dialogue and cooperation within Myanmar. Thank you.
So we are really running out of time. There is one last question from Tulce. I don't know whether you want
last question, and we'll say goodbye.
And then we'll end up.
Oh, thanks very much. Just wanted to ask you a follow-up to Guterres' visit to Moscow and Moscow wanting to hear his plans for the next 5 years. So if you could just provide a quick summary on what Moscow would like to hear from Guterres. Thanks very much.
Well, how he views his work as Secretary General in these turbulent times, what efforts he would do to preserve multipolarity and international diplomacy, and to preserve the United Nations. What is the place of the United Nations in the world according to him, and what are his real immediate plans, what are his priorities, political, economic, cultural, social, I don't know, whatever. So it's a very broad discussion, and of course he is not an unknown figure to us. It's not that we are, meeting him for the first time and questioning him. What's your name, date of birth, and so on and so forth. Of course, we know all this data, but he has now experience of almost 5 years. He has a lot of things to process, and he has a lot of things to share with us. And we need to understand what were his conclusions for this first term, and what change, if any, he intends to make during the second term. How he will interact with different countries, with different initiatives. It's a very important position, and very much depends on Secretary General, on the Secretariat. So that's why we are very keen to hear the answers, and to engage in a very constructive and open-minded discussion on this. We are very glad to welcome him in Moscow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It was
Thank you.
And see you in 1 month. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador.